The Rings of Power Season 2 Episode 1 Recap. The second season of The Rings of Power has finally arrived. Sauron, the Dark Lord, returns to Middle-earth, leading an army of orcs. Dwarves, elves, and men must unite under the banner of the High King of the Southlands to face the impending war. The story begins in the early Second Age, in the region of Forod. Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, has just fallen. A young man named Sauron addresses a gathering of orcs, extolling his pursuit of metaphysical power, a power that will enable him to reclaim Middle-earth. The orcs are skeptical. Sauron's tone shifts, reminding them of their lowly status in the eyes of the world, how they are hunted and despised. He argues that only by following him, by taking the offensive, can they ever hope for something more? His words enrage one of the orc captains, who lunges at Sauron, only to be effortlessly killed. This display of power silences the crowd. Adar, a fallen elf, steps forward, pledging his allegiance to Sauron as their new leader. As Sauron bows, ready to accept the Iron Crown symbolizing his newfound authority, Adar betrays him, plunging a blade into his chest. The other orcs follow suit, stabbing Sauron to death. Uncertain, Adar checks Sauron's body, only to be met with a blinding white light. The surrounding area is instantly engulfed in ice and snow. When the light subsides, all that remains of Sauron is a pool of blood. Adar assumes leadership of the orcs. Unbeknownst to them, Sauron's blood seeps into the ground, flowing into a subterranean cave. There, it encounters a passing rat. Black tendrils shoot out, ensnaring and draining the creature of its blood. Rejuvenated, the tendrils retreat from the cave. Outside, Sauron, now in the form of the tendrils, encounters a passing horseman and drains him of his blood, regaining his human form. He possesses the ability to regenerate. After a long journey, Sauron encounters a group of human refugees. Their leader, a kind old man, warns him against going further, explaining that the path ahead is overrun by orcs. Sauron notices the man's badge, a symbol of the lost king, and decides to join them, hoping to find refuge in a new land. Their journey is fraught with danger. During a sea monster attack, Sauron prioritizes his own survival, stealing the old man's badge and abandoning the refugees. He manages to fight off the monster, but only a handful of the refugees survive. Adrift at sea, Sauron encounters a drowning human emissary named Galadriel. This encounter sets the stage for the events of the first season. After the elves forge the three elven rings, Galadriel uncovers Sauron's true identity. He is forced to flee back to Mordor. However, Adar now controls his orc army and has successfully repelled a joint force of elves and humans using the power of Mount Doom. Many humans are now enslaved by the orcs. Sauron despises Adar but knows this is not the time for revenge. He approaches Adar, claiming to be a captive human king with valuable information. He tells Adar about a sorcerer who created 3 rings possessing immense power enough to enslave the orcs. He promises to reveal the sorcerer's location in exchange for the freedom of his people. Adar suspects that the sorcerer might be Sauron himself. Although tempted to torture the information out of him, Adar decides to entertain Sauron's proposal. He throws him into a dungeon, guarded by a fearsome wolf. A human traitor attempts to persuade Sauron to cooperate, but Sauron remains defiant. The traitor throws him a bone in disgust. As punishment for talking back, the guards beat Sauron mercilessly. Left alone, Sauron picks up the bone and uses it to lure the wolf closer. He whispers to the beast, seemingly enchanting it. To everyone's surprise, the once ferocious wolf becomes docile as a lamb. The next morning, Adar visits Sauron in his cell. Seeing Sauron chained and beaten, Adar is reminded of his own time as Morgoth's prisoner. He offers Sauron a deal: reveal the sorcerer's location and become his servant. Sauron readily agrees. He reveals that the sorcerer is merely a disguise, a fabrication. He offers to lead Adar to the sorcerer, promising him the power to crush the elves once and for all. Adar, convinced, agrees. Sauron kneels and pledges his loyalty. His freedom secured, Sauron sets out for an elven city. The city's leader is none other than Celebrimbor, the master smith who forged the elven rings. Meanwhile, Galadriel, unaware of Sauron's return, faces her own troubles. It was she who brought Sauron, disguised as a human, to the elven city and helped him gain Celebrimbor's trust. The High King of the Elves is furious. The 3 rings are adorned with silmaril gems, of which the elves possess only 3. He had hoped to use the rings to revitalize the fading elven tree. Now, he fears Sauron might have tainted the rings during their creation. Elrond, the elf prince, believes the rings are compromised and urges their immediate destruction. The High King, however, is hesitant. If the tree dies, the elves will be forced to leave Middle-earth, leaving all races vulnerable to the forces of darkness. Torn, the High King decides to take a chance on the rings. Galadriel supports his decision, but Elrond remains unconvinced. Defying the High King, he steals the rings and leaps from a cliff. Miraculously, he survives and seeks out his friend Gil-galad, a renowned elf smith. After hearing Elrond's concerns, Gil-galad, though doubtful of Sauron's ability to corrupt the rings, agrees to help. They decide to dispose of the rings in the deepest trenches of the ocean. Meanwhile, the High King, realizing the rings are gone, orders a search for Elrond. He suspects Elrond might have sought help from Gil-galad. He arrives at Gil-galad's home, but finds only Elrond. Gil-galad, it seems, has already set sail with the rings. After a day and night at sea, Gil-galad reaches the trench. As he prepares to discard the rings, a sudden tremor shakes the boat. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he opens the bag, gazing upon the 3 rings. Back on land, the High King has given up hope of finding the rings. The elven tree is on the verge of death. As he prepares to announce their imminent departure, Gil-galad appears, one of the elven rings gleaming on his finger. He proclaims the rings possess unimaginable power. Before the High King can examine it, Elrond arrives, startling him. One of the rings rolls across the floor, stopping at Galadriel's feet. She picks it up and puts it on. The High King claims the last ring for himself. In a breathtaking moment, the elven tree begins to rejuvenate. Golden light emanates from its leaves. After what seems like an eternity, the tree is restored to its former glory. Elsewhere, a mysterious old man, seeking to unlock his lost memories and powers, travels with his Harfoot companion, Nori, to the land of Run. Their journey leads them to a desolate wasteland. Lost and low on food, Nori begs the old man to use his magic to conjure fruit. The old man, apprehensive, asks Nori to stand back. When he feels she is a safe distance away, he begins to chant. The ground rumbles, and Nori watches in anticipation. Suddenly, a nearby withered tree explodes. Instead of fruit, the explosion unearths insects from the roots, a delicacy for Harfoots. Nori, delighted, praises the old man's magic. He blushes, admitting it was nothing special. He then mentions a recurring dream where he sees a powerful staff. He believes that obtaining this staff will unlock his true potential. Later, the old man notices a flicker of light in the distance. He fears they are being followed. They quickly put out their fire and hide, waiting for daybreak. As the sun rises, they spot a figure lurking nearby. Together, they subdue him, only to discover it is Nori's Harfoot friend. He reveals that he followed them, wanting to be part of their adventure. He has information about the wasteland, having stumbled upon ancient Harfoot records that mention a similar experience. Guided by this ancient wisdom, they navigate their way out of the wasteland. Unbeknownst to them, they are still being followed. A shadowy figure with a vendetta against the old man has been watching their every move. This figure, a woman who previously tried to abduct the old man, answers to a powerful, bearded man. Furious with his subordinate's failure, the bearded man orders a new group to capture the old man, revealing that he knows his true identity, one of the Astari, destined to help defeat Sauron. Meanwhile, the old man, weak and exhausted from their journey, collapses from dehydration. Nori and her friend desperately search for water, eventually finding a well at the edge of the desert. They help the old man drink. As he regains consciousness, he notices a withered branch on the ground. Its shape is eerily similar to the staff from his dreams. Before he can react, the woman from before and her companions arrive. Instinctively, he grabs the branch and utters an incantation. The desert sand erupts, forming a swirling vortex. The woman and her companions are swept away. The display of power is immense, far beyond what the old man is capable of in his weakened state. The staff disintegrates in his hand. Nori and her friend are pulled into the air. Thus concludes the first episode of the Rings of Power's second season. Stay tuned for more.